I'm here with Professor Edwin Barnhart of the Great Courses Plus and many other projects, but that's what I know you from. I have been listening to the Great Courses Plus for probably 10 years now, and my favourite of those courses are the ones done by you, Ed.
Oh,
Ev
thanks.
all of the Americas it encompasses. Absolutely incredible stuff. And I gather you're also an archaeologist and you're also all sorts of other things. Do you want to just introduce yourself, Ed?
Okay. Well, first off, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be on your show.
It's an honor
Uh,
to have you on.
I am Ed Barnhart, archaeologist, explorer, educator, more and more on the internet. But I am indeed an archaeologist. I'm the director of Maya Exploration Center, and as that name would indicate, most of my career has been in the Maya area. So I've done, a lot of things there. Highlights. I'm a hieroglyphic expert. I've done a number of papers on that. I've mapped the city of Palenque and found over 1,000 new buildings there. I was part of digging the tombs of the founders in Copan, Honduras, and I found a Maya city in Belize when I was just 25 years old. So there's a highlight reel.
You're basically as close to an Indiana Jones as we can get.
I haven't encountered any Nazis yet, and I'm dubious whether artifacts actually belong in museums or not. But we can get into that.
Yeah. Or alien crystal skulls as well.
Oh gosh, that so stabbed my inner child, that movie.
Yeah. Oh, considering how good the first few are, yeah, that one was a rare miss from Indiana Jones. Um,
He's an interesting character. I don't think he's aged as well as we archaeologists would like him to, as being the only point of reference for what we do that most of the world has.
yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. Yeah. I mean, I understand that he was actually based on quite a few real figures. Some of the
Yeah,
early
I
kind of
think he's an
Mayanists.
amalgam of a couple of figures, and
Mm.
one of them is a very reputable archaeologist, and one of them is kind of, a rogue explorer.
So which one is which?
I don't recall the rogue explorer's name. I've seen lots of pictures of him. That look that he gets with the whip and the thing. The archaeologist is Alfred. No, it's Maudsley. It's
Okay, yeah. Because I was going to say Sylvanus Morley. I
no,
heard that
you're
he
right.
was a little bit
I
based
had the
on it
name mixed up in my head. It is Sylvanus Morley.
because there's an
And
idea that he might have been a spy in the First World War and all this sort of
oh,
swashbuckling things he was
actually, I
doing
think
in
we're
the
pretty
background.
sure he was a spy in the World War. And
Yeah,
he's the
yeah.
one, when Indiana puts on his bow tie and looks dapper, he's Morley.
He's
And
Morley.
when
Yeah.
he's out in the field with his leather jacket on and his hat, he's this rogue explorer who I think is mostly a caricature.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of those early excavators were really. I mean, it's excavator is one term for it. Sort of treasure hunter is another one. Uh,
Antiquarian is the polite
Antiquarian. That's
term
the
for
polite term.
those gentlemen looters.
Yeah, a gentleman looter. I like that. I like that. But then it's these are the sort of people that we stand on their shoulders. These are the guys who did a lot of the work to sort of find these sites in the first place.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So
Especially when it comes to Mesoamerica, I have so much admiration for folks like Morley and especially Franz Blom. I mean, I look at the list of things that he found on horseback, and I will never get to all the sites that he initially found. Some of them are still, out there after 100 years. We still haven't gotten back to them.
it's amazing, isn't it? I always think the kind of iron constitution that a lot of these guys must have had, just tracking through endless wilderness, probably like drinking the local water, which is quite intense.
Oh, I think those early archaeologists, especially Blum, were drinking about anything they could get their hands on. They
Yeah,
were
yeah.
hard men, fueled
Oh,
by
for sure,
by,
for
by
sure.
whiskey and bravado.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, maybe not that much water being drunk, maybe mostly whiskey.
In the case
Yeah.
of Blum, I believe it is true.
Mm, interesting, interesting. Yeah, so I mean, how did that feel when you found that city? Which city is it that you
It's
found?
called Mashna. I got to name it. That means monkey
Oh,
house in Maya. It's in Belize, very close to where Belize, Guatemala, and Mexico connect in a place called Program for Belize.
Okay, getting my geography in place. So close to Calakmul or not so much?
I mean, as the crow flies, not terribly far away.
Hmm.
The closest, better known sites are La Milpa and Rio Azul on the Guatemala side.
Hmm. You see, the amazing thing about the Maya world is that you can find, I mean, there's so many cities. You've just mentioned those two cities, and I don't even know those cities. And I thought, you know, I know
Well,
quite a
I'm
lot of Maya
confident that there are
cities.
hundreds of cities that we don't know.
Exactly, but there's so
Maybe
many.
hundreds and cities together is an exaggeration, but Maya towns,
Yeah,
hundreds.
settlements. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I mean, yeah, what is this town? What is a city, really? But because I mean, the Maya settlements, they're quite spread out, weren't they? Really, they're kind of with nice gardens and things and cultivated land in between.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
definitely true all through their long history, but there were times where the cities were closer together and times when they were farther apart, which was an interesting hint into what was going on in their history at that time.
Interesting. So there were times when city building, urbanism intensified to a certain extent.
Well, I was talking more about the shift between their classic period and what we call terminal classic, moving into the post-classic. Classic period cities in the Petén and around, we see at least 20 kilometers of distance between major cities, with little villages in between. But when that collapsed in around 800 CE, and they regathered themselves in places, especially like the Puc region of the Yucatan, all of a sudden, all the cities are less than 5 kilometers away from each other. So there was a real tightening up for a period of time.
That's really interesting. So that's places like Uxmal and that kind of
Uxmal's
area.
like the biggest of that cluster.
Mm.
Good job. Yep, the Puc is Uxmal's the king there, but there are tons of cities all very close to each other, which was not something they did before the classic period collapsed. And in some way or another, it's got to be a clue as to what political formation allowed them to continue from the rubble of their failed classic experiment. It's not a failure, but it ended.
Mm.
As all civilizations do, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, of course, as they do. Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Yeah, Uxmal was actually one of my favorite of the Maya cities that I visited. There's something about that
Such a
place.
beautiful place.
Not many tourists. I think I was the first person in. I got there really early. Got a taxi over from Merida. Um, Lots of wildlife around. The place had sort of gone back to the forest a little bit. Also, the artwork at that site is incredible. The Pook style is just everywhere. Every surface covered in all of these sort of mystical beings and mythological deities and all this. Oh, so good. Where does it all
I've
come
heard
from?
that style called, it's sometimes we call that the Maya Baroque style
Ah, love
because
that.
it's just so busy and all the
It is.
facades are full of these incredibly complex messages and pieces of art fit in mosaic patterns. It
Yeah.
it really is fantastic. It also has the best evidence of urban planning, like a master plan from the beginning of any Maya site. You can just everywhere you stand in that site, you have a beautiful view of other parts of the site in such a way that you can see that it was a master plan. A lot of Maya sites, especially the earlier ones in the classic, are what we call accretional style development, where you can see that one king to the next has their own agenda and their own building program. But something was different in Uxmal, where for its entire history there was a master plan that was not deviated from, and it caused this aesthetically beautiful site that obviously affected you. Does me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do we have pre-classic or classic ruins at Uxmal, or does it really begin in that later period?
Well, I'm not sure that we've dug deep enough to really answer that question
Yeah.
with confidence, but To my knowledge, Uxmal is a site that was purely built up in the Terminal Classic, so after 800. There are lots of sites in the area that have an older classic and even pre-classic uh, underbelly, but Uxmal, to my knowledge, and Pepe Huchim has been digging all sorts of things lately. He has still not announced anything earlier than Terminal Classic.
So interesting because I mean it means that someone has centrally planned that whole place. Some king, or more likely, someone working on behalf of the king,
And
has.
there's an interesting clue as to the beginnings of the site in the Palace of the Governor. It looks right out. Its orientation is different than all the rest of the buildings at the site. It's easy to see that that's the fact on any map of the city. It's the only building tweaked this way. Anthony Avini identified decades ago now that it was oriented to the farthest northern excursion of Venus. It only happens once every 8 years, but there's this cool view out its front door over a double-headed jaguar throne and out onto the horizon where Venus will rise once every 8 years. But right there is a temple. It's at a site called Nopat. And
Wow.
so Uxmal lined up the palace of the governor to view an already existent pyramid that's out there on the horizon. So whoever was at Nopad, and I did walk out there, it's not a tourist site, but I saw classic period evidence. So even from the surface, I could tell it's older than Uxmal. And Uxmal somehow was either, at least using it as an orientation point for astronomy, but might have in the same breath be honoring it as it's the people who invited them to come.
Yes. Yes. Some sort of link to their own history. Very interesting. Very interesting. So from Uxmal, let's go back to, I mean, I suppose this Uxmal to me is kind of like it's like one of the peaks of this Mesoamerican world. And I want to ask you where it all comes from. Let's go to
Where
the
it
very
all
beginning.
comes from.
Yeah. How does
All
it
right,
begin?
easy, easy.
How does it
Let's
begin?
let's get into it. You're referring to Maya or Mesoamerican civilization in general?
All of it. So I suppose I want to go back to the first sort of urbanism, I suppose, and the first coming together of a culture that can be called Mesoamerican. So I mean, as far as I can tell, it begins with sort of the three sisters: corn, squash, beans.
Well, it's those were certainly pivotal to most of Mesoamerican history, and especially if we qualify, the beginnings of, sedentary urbanism. We have a mark that's, around the culture we call Olmec. People had been there for a long time. I think our earliest evidence goes back to 10,000 BCE, somewhere right around there, where we have that skeleton Naia. And for decades, we've had carbon 14 off of handprints in a cave in Yucatan. So people that were of Maya stature have been there for 10,000, 12,000 years at least. But they go through that kind of Paleolithic thing that everybody in the Americas does and into the Archaic period where they're still nomadic hunters and doing seasonal rounds. And then, really, I would peg roughly 2000 BCE, where we really start to see some changes. And we start seeing people gathering in sedentary villages and using corn, and that's mostly in southern Mexico and into bleeding into Guatemala. That area down there are our first little communities, the first people that make pottery around 1800 BCE. That's when we get our first hint of what we call Olmec civilization, which has always been said to be the mother culture of Mesoamerica. All the cultures after it do share, at least in the eyes of art history, similarities that move forward. We see the hints of the religions and certainly the art style, the animals, and the way they portray people is all very. The Olmec are the first people to kind of put together that art. But that whole mother culture thing is less clear today than it was when that term was first coined by, I think, uh, it'll come to me. The mother culture name came up around the 1930s. But what we're seeing is here's an interesting thing. You just said the three sisters, right? The corn, the beans, the squash. The original Olmec city, the big one that's the first kind of actual city with thousands of people as its population, is San Lorenzo in the swamps of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. It's becoming more and more clear that those guys weren't really corn farmers. They
Oh,
were doing aquaculture. They put themselves up on a big ridge in an area that would seasonally inundate and came up with all sorts of strategies to harvest uh, mollusks and fish. And that was their economy. They really weren't eating much corn. But the other
wow.
cultures
Okay.
around them were doing it a lot more. And they
Yeah.
taught the Olmec that, which is a real kick in the pants of the mother culture hypothesis.
It's true. How interesting. How interesting. Yeah, I always associated the Olmecs with big fields of corn. So that's
You
really
know, when they
interesting.
did take it, they took it to a new level.
Yeah.
What they were doing was putting, religion and iconographic messages into the traditional ways of life. They were finding a new way to create community through religious iconography that denoted a religion we don't really fully understand. We can see its seeds in later civilizations, but we're not sure what that first religion really looked like. Did they actually have a pantheon? We really have a hard time identifying anybody who's really a god in Olmec art. But they were definitely San Lorenzo, as I said, were more fishermen. When they switched to corn, they figured out that where they lived was terrible for growing corn. And so, as San Lorenzo dies around 1000 BCE, another big city, Laventa, rises, and that's where the first Olmec pyramid is. But it's very notable that they picked a place that was a lot better to grow corn. And all of a sudden, Olmec iconography has a new part of its repertoire, which is corn imagery. They put it onto people are it's sprouting out of their heads and it's in magical scepters. So they take this, very utilitarian staple crop and incorporate it into their religious messages that they're transmitting to their neighbors. The neighbors gave them corn, they gave them back a corn god.
How interesting. How interesting. So are we thinking it's a territorial expansionist empire? How would the Olmecs, how would the society of the Olmecs have worked?
Good question. I don't see, we do not see them taking over anybody's place in a more European fashion. They don't march in with an army and plant the Olmec flag. What they do is establish trade networks, and they're getting raw materials from those other areas like Guatemala and central Mexico. They're bringing them into their swamps in the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, where they've figured out, swamps are horrible to us, but they are very diverse in terms of their resources, especially swamps at the base of mountains. That's an ecotone. So they picked a place that had a lot of resources, but not the stone resources. So they bring them in and they would carve them with Olmec iconography and then export them back out to those places. So in one regard, we could call it a trade relationship, that the relationships they forged with their neighbors were not a conquest, not an empire spreading out, but a trade relationship. But the funny thing is that the Olmec were getting material things, and what they were exporting, I think, was ideas and religion. So in some regards, they they were taking over people, but not in body and mind. They were, I joke sometimes, they're Mesoamerica's first proselytizers.
Mm. Yeah. So it's a cultural, it's a religious takeover. It's hearts and minds, sort of bringing them into the Olmec sphere.
And
Very
it's
interesting.
interesting because those areas, some, Central Mexico more than Guatemala, but they don't really have their own uh, art traditions that they're applying to materials like ceramic and stone until the Olmecs show up. In the case of the of Central Mexico, they were making all of these little figurines, but they didn't really seem like they had religious overtones until they met the Olmec. And then they get these things we call like the Olmec dragon, and you see images of people transforming from humans into jaguars, which is a very shamanistic religious thing to display.
The were jaguars.
Right. Those great were jaguars.
Mm.
So
Yes.
fantastic. There,
Mm.
and I think, when you look at the larger corpus of Olmec art, like my friend Kent Riley did so well, he put together this paper where he put together a collection of art pieces that really show the transformation from human to complete jaguar and all the stages in between. The Olmecs showed us snapshots of people in the process of transformation, right from a normal human to a full jaguar and every shade in between. Reminds me of that movie, American Werewolf in London, where they just show us snapshots of him
Yeah.
transforming into the wolf. They Ken put together this marvelous sequence that really brought home the fact these are humans transforming into jaguars and back.
Amazing. So these are I mean, I suppose these are, would you say these are the leaders of the society? These were these sort of shaman priests.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. There are funny things that, we think we know or that totally confuse us. I do wish I could see an actual Olmecs person's reaction to all of the fluff we say about we think we see in their art.
Yeah. Yeah. Or any ancient person, for any of our modern
Oh
interpretations of
gosh,
what was
wouldn't it
going on
be
in their
embarrassing
worlds.
if we could pull one up into the future and have them tell us just how wrong the field of archaeology really is?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's just a bet.
What are
Yeah,
we going to do? We
it's a
we
best guess.
theorize,
Yeah, yeah. We do
as
what
they
we
can
can
only
with the
make it.
evidence available. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we've got to talk about the big stone heads. So these are the most famous. They've got to be the most famous thing about the Olmecs. I've seen them in museums all over the United States. I haven't actually. No, I've seen one. I tell you, like in the Mexico Anthropology Museum as well. Incredible museum, and they're huge. They're absolutely huge. Maybe you can tell us a bit about the sheer scale of these things. And do they depict rulers?
That's what we believe, and I do believe that. And I just did a new series for the Great Courses Plus on the Olmec. I don't know if you got a chance to see that, but
I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
oh
I'm looking
boy,
forward to it.
everybody knows about the heads. And so, I've got 12 lectures talking about all sorts of stuff. And I actually, when I put it all together, I was like, "Oh, I don't think I spoke about the heads enough. People are going to be upset about that." But there's so much more to know. But the heads are fantastic, and they are the Olmec ambassadors of modern times. They are, so many people could say, "Oh, that's an Olmec head," when they see a picture of it. Where
Mm,
other cultures you may not be able to say that, but those heads, they're
yeah,
so evocative. There are
iconic.
17 we know. I am certain there are more out there that we haven't found yet. Despite their giant size, they get buried in that swamp. Hard to find them. The smallest of them are 5 tons. The largest one, called the La Cobada head, is 50 tons. So huge pieces. And that's not the biggest of the megaliths in the world. Certainly, your neck of the woods has things that are heavier.
Mm, yeah,
But
yeah.
what the stuff like the Neolithic guys of Europe, what they didn't have to combat with was a swamp. the Olmec pulled these off of a single volcano in the Tushla Mountains. There's a quarry that we know of, and then they dragged them down the volcano into the jungles, maybe transport them through the rivers, though that's not as simple as it sounds. And then they'd have to get them up on top of their acropoli. So the environment that they had to haul things through, not to take anything away from the Bluestones, that was cool too. But how they got them to these sites, I think, is probably the most enduring mystery related to the heads.
And the Bluestones don't have faces, unique
That's right.
faces carved into them. All
Gosh,
of
we
them,
don't
you
even really know that. We argue back and forth. Did they carve them in full at the quarry, or did they just make kind of a ball and roll it to their site and finish it there? We don't know.
even so, the thing that amazes me about them is that they may be actual likenesses of real people.
They're so distinctive that I believe they are. They're not like, the Moai of Easter Island, where every face is pretty much the same, not to take anything away from those magical statues, but they're portraits. They are
Yeah.
portraits. We may or may not be right that they're the kings or the rulers, but they are people. And we can also say, when it comes to the Olmec, what I do to try to get a lens into them is we kind of backward project. The Olmec are the first, so we have no precedence to say, oh, here's the cultural development that led to the Olmec. They kind of, in terms of art, they pop onto the scene with no precedent, but they do have an influence on the future, on the subsequent cultures. And since the Maya and the Zapotec and even the later Aztec are pretty good at portraiture, and they actually do things that are kind of in the style of Roman busts. Palenque is a great example. I mean, we know if you could show me stone monuments of various Palenque kings, and I can tell you who it is just from the face. So there's a tradition going forward of portraiture, which I feel we can somewhat safely backwards project onto the Olmec and say that there was a post precedent for those things actually being portraits.
Yeah, absolutely. The portraiture of the New World is actually incredible. Also, just I want to mention the moche as well, the moche pots, which you talk about in your great courses. Again, they're faces, and they're really amazingly made, and
Oh, aren't they so magnificent?
they're really a match for anything in the classical world in the Mediterranean, and it's baffling because a lot of people, I think, people maybe don't necessarily know that popularly that this art style is as good as the old world. You know,
Oh
I mean,
gosh, I mean, when it comes, the moche are so underappreciated
yeah,
that
yeah,
portraiture, and we don't have a couple of examples. We have like
thousands.
30,000 of them.
Yeah,
There's a lot. Like I don't know the numbers for Roman busts, but I would bet money that there are more moche busts of beautiful quality than there are Roman busts of beautiful quality.
probably. Yeah, there are an outrageous amount of those moche heads. I suppose is there an equivalent in the Olmec society? Smaller carved faces. I know we have the boxer and things like that.
Right, but he's also stone. The medium
Yeah,
counts too.
it does. It
Neither one
does.
is easy. I could not carve a face out of marble or build it out of ceramic, but
Mm,
that is an important difference.
it is.
One
It
is,
is.
released from the stone. Another is molded into a shape of ceramic
Yeah.
by an artist. And that, I mean, if I was given the challenge to do both of them, I would probably do better in the stone than I would in the ceramic.
Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
true artisan skill.
It
It's
really
one thing
is.
to make a painting, it's another thing to make a 3D ceramic of someone's face.
Yeah, it's real expertise.
And the Olmec, they didn't really do much of that. No, um there there are definitely Olmec pieces of pottery, But the things that are fantastic that they make of pottery, the biggest category of them are these things we call chubby babies. They're funny. They're usually of a white kind of ceramic, and they're full like toddler babies, but they're chubby, and they have bald heads. That's pretty close to one. He's an adult, but
Yeah,
that's the same sort of
it's a
thing.
similar
Yep.
sort of thing. Yeah.
And they're hollow. So again, the expertise, the ceramic expertise to make a hollow, thin, hollow, very lifelike ceramic. They had the capacity, but they weren't doing the same sort of thing as the Moche were, which is a whole perennial frustration. Why are these great civilizations right next to each other? The Maya and the Moche were contemporaries, but we've had entire conferences, and there's like a box full or so of artifacts that we know are from South America and the Maya area or vice versa, but we've never really been able to prove the connection, the
Mm,
contact, beyond these random artifacts, which are not enough to make an argument for one civilization influencing another. Contact, for sure. Influence, unprovable at the moment.
yeah, absolutely. I suppose, I mean, it's feasible to do it in a boat, right? And I mean,
Mhm.
overland could have been done as well. It's not inhospitable between northern Peru and southern Mexico.
There are a
Lots of
number
forests
of
to get through,
cases and
but
pieces of evidence where I don't think any Mesoamerican archaeologist would argue that there wasn't contact. The problem is we can't discern what the scale of the influence was during that contact. Now, the huge one is that Mesoamerica had no metallurgy, none. They were a totally lithic stone age culture, if we can use that terribly pejorative term. But when they do start getting metal, it occurs first on the west coast of Mexico in two different locations, and there are two different time periods too. There's an early one, it fades away, and then again closer to Aztec times, the use of gold and silver and the way to use those come in. But both cases are right along the coast where if South America did use a boat and come up, that's where they'd land.
so this is the land that trying to get my geography. This is where the Tarascans would be later on, or not quite.
Yeah, the Tarascan Empire did extend out to the coast. So
Mm.
yes, their heartland was more inland, but
I'm
you've
skipping
got it
forwards
right.
a little bit there.
Colima, Jalisco, Guerrero, and all the way down into the southern coast of Oaxaca. Those areas are where our first metallurgy comes, not once but twice. And that's, if you had to draw a line between South America, how would they get there? They'd land there. Same thing happens with ceramics. There are ceramics 1,000 years earlier in Ecuador, and the very first pre-Maya ceramics or Mesoamerica's period, they come from the southern coast of Guatemala, about 1800 BCE, and they teach the Olmec about pottery. But I mean, the dashed line that we can't see all the parts of, definitely indicates that South America had not once, but multiple times major influence on the technology of Mesoamerica.
So one of the amazing things that I think about when I see all these carvings done by the Maya, done by the Olmecs, and everybody else really, is that they don't have metal tools. They are doing these things with. I mean, what are they doing it with?
It's all stone. It's
It's all
stone,
stone. It's
and
amazing.
amazingly, sometimes it's wood. Even we find implements that are hardwoods that are burned in a fire to a point where they're a real strong tool. And one of the things that I think people might not think about the stone type of each civilization. In the case of the Maya, they're using primarily limestone. In some cases, like to the far south, it's volcanic tuff. But both of those are very easy stones to carve. So they can be using just, what we Americans call chert. which I think Europe calls flint.
Yeah. So they're really using. I mean, it's a really advanced Stone Age society,
Right.
basically. Sorry to use the term
Bizarre,
Stone
but
Age.
it just hit my brain. Alfonso Caso, he's the one who said Olmec mother culture first. I love Alfonso. Sorry for
There we
so,
go.
sorry
There we
for
go.
forgetting your name for a while.
Yeah.
Okay,
There we go.
but yeah, they
So yeah, no,
go
you
ahead.
carry. Let's carry on, and then we can speak about Alfonso in a moment.
Sure. No, we were. It was already passed. I just couldn't let it hang that I forgot that great man's
Oh,
name. So
I'm going to bring him back up. So
cool. Stones, Maya stone tools. Amazing the things they can do with them. And they have jade and jadeite. That's stronger than a lot of stones, but we don't really see them using those implements. Funny enough, their main carving thing, if we're talking about art and actually weapons too, obsidian, volcanic glass is a huge thing for them. The problem with it is that it's very brittle. If you make like an arrowhead of it and it goes into something, if it hits something hard, it's gonna smash into 1,000 pieces.
it's a
But if
one-use
it's
technology.
something like fleshy, it's gonna go right through because it's sharper than any metal implement humans have ever made. Obsidian amazingly feathers out to an atom of thickness. So when you nap an obsidian blade, that thing is the sharpest ever. There was a point in which modern medicine was going to use it as surgical instruments. The trouble was that certain people's bodies weren't healing right. The cut was so thin, certain people's skin would not recognize they were cut and it wouldn't heal. So obsidian is way sharper than stainless steel and it can do amazing things and carve into even jade.
It
In the
cuts.
hands of a good artist, obsidian can carve jade. People say it can't be done, but I've seen it with my own eyes.
That's insane. It cuts down to the molecular level, down to the atom. I
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's absolutely
And
amazing.
unlike the glass in your window pane, it does melt, but so slowly that it's imperceptible. I have
Mm.
found pieces of obsidian in buried contexts that are 1,000 years old, and they cut my finger. It does not melt like normal glass. Obsidian is amazing.
Yeah. Wow. And you can use it to kill White Walkers in Game of Thrones.
That's right. That's right. I actually just visited the Greek world and I was surprised how much obsidian was there. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got the volcanic glass, but even after the Bronze Age, there were certain things and tools that they continued to make out of obsidian. I think recognizing when it comes to a cutting edge, it's superior, still is
Mm.
today.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Yeah, the island of Milos has a huge amount of obsidian, and that was this sort of obsidian center in the Cycladic Islands. Really
And
interesting.
they make their blades the same way too. It's amazing. They
Mm.
make these obsidian nodules. They make a flat top, and then they whack blades off of the flat top, and they come kind of out as little curved fingers. But you can take one nodule and make hundreds of blades. And I was fascinated that the Greeks were doing it exactly like the Maya were. We have these things that we find in archaeology called exhausted cores, where somebody's already taken a big nodule of obsidian like this with a flat top and whacked 1,000 blades off, and it comes to it looks like an apple core, like a little curtain around the outside. But the same thing. I'm not suggesting cultural connection, but just smart people figured out exactly how to get the most obsidian blades out of a nodule and did the same technique.
What's the oldest obsidian mining in the world? Because I'm just thinking, I know in the Aegean, obsidian was being used at the very end of the Ice Age. So we're talking, 14,000 years ago, even before. So I mean, it's almost the same time that people were going into the Americas. So it almost strikes me as a
Yeah,
thing that was, it's super ancient. It's Paleolithic technology, basically, that then if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It just carries on.
it is kind of a unfair comparison since the Americas, we our evidence in abundance begins at like 12,000 years ago. So there is obsidian back then. California, we
Mm.
find obsidian artifacts that early on, but beyond that, we're having trouble finding humans, period.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So the
I mean,
old
what?
world's got to jump on us for that. They
Yeah,
they
yeah,
ha
for
they
sure.
have the older humans.
A lot more evidence, a lot more evidence. Right, we've talked about the Olmecs a little bit. We've got to talk about the Maya because in the last few years, you sort of hinted at this. I've read some people kind of question this idea of the Olmecs being the original civilization, the mother culture of Mesoamerica. I read some people are beginning to think that the Maya may have been doing things at a similar sort of time. What do you think of this? Have you heard anything about this?
I have heard things about that. Probably some of what you heard came out of my mouth.
It may well have. It may well have done. It may well have done. It probably did. It probably
I
did.
really do think
The
we have, at this point in archaeology of the region, we have a strong case for coevolution. The Olmec had to contact somebody to get all that jade and obsidian, and it's the Maya, and in terms of the obsidian, it could also be central Mexico. But in terms of the jade, which they were using from the very beginning, they were contacting people in the Maya area. That's where the jade's from. And we see the archaeological evidence of the two co-evolving at the same chronological time periods, and interesting blurs of their culture in the middle, right where you'd expect a border. The site of Chiapa de Corzo is a fascinating Maya and Olmec site. So we see them influencing each other, especially in terms of architecture and corn. The Maya are teaching the Olmec more than the Olmec are teaching the Maya.
I love this. So you say that. So there's a site where it's a Maya slash Olmec site. What does that look like? Are we? Is this an urban site or is it kind of older than that?
It is an urban site. Unfortunately, it's been very trashed by modern civilization. It's underneath a town that it's named after, Chiapa de Corzo, in southern Chiapas. And it's got stone architecture, which the Olmec never did. So that's a Maya contribution. But then it has very Olmec carvings. There's a very important one, which is our oldest dated monument. Not that it's talking about a date before it, but it's a contemporaneous date, like a inauguration date. It's 36 BCE, and it's in Chiapa de Corzo, but it looks much more like the Olmec writing than the Maya writing that's developing at the same time. So it's more like what we call Epi-Olmec script. So the literate people were Olmec origin, and a lot of the artifacts look very Olmec too, but the architecture comes from origins earlier on the coast of where Guatemala and Mexico connect. That's called the Soconusco. And the Soconusco has sites that are actually as old or even older than the first Olmec sites. The big site of San Lorenzo and the weird little ones we find that are just before.
So there's this merger of different cultures going on.
And I think that we're beginning to see it again in northern Chiapas. There's this fascinating site called Aguada Phoenix, which is an
Yes,
Olmec platform.
this is what I
But
was
all the
gonna mention.
artifacts are Maya. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
archaeologist is still calling it pre-classic Maya. He doesn't want to say Olmec because it's outside the Olmec area. But again, it's like we found another edge of the Olmec frontier that we didn't know existed. So we're at the moment resistant, or should I say, conservatively cautious to just brand it Olmec.
I was under the impression it was pre-classic Maya, so that's really interesting that that you're saying it's an Olmec platform
Well,
in the
the
Maya area.
archaeologist himself, Inamata, has kind of, turned his own head around. He did this
Yeah.
fantastic LIDAR study, or gathered actually LIDAR information from the petroleum industry,
Hmm.
finding something like 200 of these massive raised platforms that are, a kilometer across and have a very definitive architecture to them. Aguada Phoenix is one of them. And so, like, when he started saying that was not Olmec, there we knew of like five of these platforms. But now, through his own work, we have like 200 of them. And Aguada Phoenix fits so clearly into the pattern. You can't have blinders on about the Olmec, at least influence, if not culture.
Is Aguada Phoenix larger than these other platforms, or are they all pretty large?
They're all pretty large. It's ridiculous. I mean, the one at San Lorenzo, which is contemporary with the Guada Phoenix, both of those, they're over a kilometer long, and over their entire length, they're 10 meters tall. So something that's a kilometer long and 30 feet for us Westerners, or
Yeah.
at least those that follow the English imperial system.
Yeah.
It's a they're absolutely massive constructions, and there are little elements that also connect them, like the formations of the buildings on top have these kinds of like one building over here and three buildings over here patterns on top, and little jut outs about midway down the path. They're too similar to not be the same inspiration.
What do you think they are? What do you think was happening? Are these ceremonial plazas where people were meeting in order to, maybe there was a shaman there transforming into a were-jaguar and they were helping him on his journey or something? What do you think was going on?
I do think that there were public things that happened on top of them, but I think they were the property of the elites. That the
Okay.
elites and probably a religious class lived up there year long, and people from the surrounding areas were invited into important ceremonial times, perhaps connected to astronomy,
Okay.
because there are some interesting things about their building alignments. None of them are very clear, but there are patterns that make one believe that.
So it's unequal from the very beginning.
Oh, well, that's kind of the hallmark of advanced civilization,
It
isn't it?
is.
As soon
Oh
as we
yeah.
decide I'm going to have more than you, well, hey, we're a civilization.
It's all downhill from there. But yeah, it's all uphill and downhill at the same time. Yes. Very interesting. Very interesting. So it's not egalitarian in your view at the beginning. It kind of there's an elite.
It's an interesting pattern where in the Olmec days, in those times, those early huge platforms with the big heads on top, and we found a palace in San Lorenzo. There's definitely elite people living there. Everybody else, like the other 20,000 people, are living very egalitarian lives.
Okay.
So, at first we see just the emergence of a kind of, you know, elite, very small portion of population
Hmm.
controlling the rest. And as time goes on, like the Maya become much more diversified. We see the diversification of labor, and all across their sites, you can see disparities in economic and socioeconomic level. All through the neighborhoods of a typical Maya city, you'll have a bigger area surrounded by smaller structures. And we think those are kind of neighborhoods that are controlled by their local clan leaders. And we see, artists, we see warrior classes, we see scribe classes. So we see the diversification of labor much more clearly in the Maya, and it's developing. Just the concept that I have more than you, and we're all cool with that,
Yeah,
is in its
yeah.
proto forms in the Olmec sites.
Interesting. And is that pre-classic Maya as well that you just mentioned? All that going on.
The pre-classic Maya is much more towards the egalitarian as well. There's huge city centers, and then the things around it are more egalitarian, and there's less of a focus on humans. I'm sitting here as those words come out of my mouth. I'm saying, can you really say that, Ed? I don't really know that I don't. I'm thinking about El Mirador, which is like the key uh pre-classic city.
Biggest pyramid
I don't
Well,
know
one of the
whether
biggest pyramids.
actually the mapping has gotten to the point where I could make the statement I just did in confidence that I know that the peripheries are fairly egalitarian in the house forms. I don't think we really have that. But I do know that there's an interesting thing that happens in the Maya area in that chronological sequence. Pre-classic, the art on the buildings is all supernatural beings, gods, forces of nature. You never see men or humans in the art. And one of the big changes from the pre-classic into the classic period is all of a sudden public art is featuring important humans.
Interesting. So the Olmecs are depicting humans, but the pre-classic Maya are not depicting humans. They're just depicting mythological beings.
Yeah, and these two were
Interesting.
contemporary. It's possible
Mm,
that one of the Olmec influences on the Maya was the concept that it's cool to exalt humans. We don't have to just revere the gods. We can also revere a special set of humans that are kind of gods on earth.
mm. Because
That
yeah,
may have been, one of those religious concepts that the Olmec, in their proselytizing ways, convinced the Maya of.
interesting, interesting. There we go. What was the impact of the Olmec on areas sort of in Oaxaca? So the Zapotecs and the Mixtecs and people like that.
Same sort of thing, a trade relationship. It's
Mm,
seen even more clearly there. The Valley of Oaxaca was really the crucible where Zapotec civilization flourishes and spreads out from there. The famous Zapotec capital is Monte Alban. But in the same area, really about, geez, 8 miles away from Monte Alban, is the site of San Jose Magote, which is another one of these interesting Olmec Zapotec places, maybe Proto Zapotec. But it's full of Olmec artifacts, and they have a resource that the Olmec back in their swamps are using in plenty. That's hematite. They're shining up these hematite mirrors and using them in the Olmec sites. But that material doesn't exist in the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. That's definitely being traded from these proto Zapotecs at San Jose Magote to San Lorenzo, and then later, same trade relationship, new site, La Venta.
wow. Any other major trade partners of the Olmecs that we can talk about?
The third big one is what we call Tlatilco culture. And they are centered where Mexico City is today. But back in those
Mm,
days, there was a huge lake, Lake Texcoco. And
mm.
so the site of Tlatilco is now underneath Mexico City, but it was in kind of the northwest of the lake area. And there was another site called Tlapacoya, which is on the southern end of the lake. But those two together are called Tlatilco culture. But they're the ones that were making all these figurines. And so they had an art style of their own before they met the Olmec. But then all of this Olmec iconography starts showing up. And what we think they're trading back to the Olmec is obsidian. They have the Pachuca mines, those green. We have this great benefit that this mine that was owned by them, and then Teotihuacan, and then the Aztecs. It's called Pachuca, and only in that mine does the obsidian turn out green. When you hold it up to the light, a little thin one, you
Wow.
can see it's green, not gray or black. And so we find that green obsidian in the Olmec area, and it's a real, just easy way to see these guys are trading with the Valley of Mexico.
Mm. How interesting. How interesting.
I would say,
Um,
let me finish a thought that we were just talking about. That the
yeah.
I made that argument that the pre-classic Maya are only showing gods on the fronts of the buildings, and then the classic period, it's all about men, the stela with men standing on captives. When that all falls apart and we get into the terminal classic, like where we were talking about Uxmal, it's really hard to find a person in the art in
Mm.
Uxmal, isn't it?
It's
They
back to the
revert to
religion.
all of the sites that emerge from the rubble of the failed classic period. They go back to putting only God's faces on the buildings. I think that the Maya decided they took a wrong turn there, and that society would work better if we started respecting the gods over men.
The kings had failed them,
Yeah,
so they
and
went. So they went back to the
for the next
gods.
100 years, the only place you ever find statues of elite people are on the back sides of the buildings in these private little places.
Hmm.
The fronts are all about the gods, and I think that when the Maya reformed themselves, this was one of the reforms they thought was important. They said, "Our ancestors revered the gods, not men, and we've fallen upon these terrible times because of our folly and hubris. Let's get back to our roots."
So the Olmec religion, is there anything that we can say about it besides the shamanic transformations?
Well, I did a whole 30-minute lecture on this for my new series for great courses, but I basically talked myself in circles.
That's fine.
Um, I would say, the things that we can see, we definitely see shamanism, right?
Hmm.
We see these transformations that are, from Alaska to Chile. That's one of the things that all of these pre-Columbian civilizations share is this shamanic tradition. So we see that in the art, and I don't think we're wrong about that. So
Yeah.
shamanism, an ability to connect to another world, which presupposes there's another world.
Hmm.
So we have that kind of three-tiered cosmos thing where there's the heavens, there's the underworld, and the world of men. That's probably already established by Olmec times. Certain pieces of art we interpret as uh, cosmovisions of that three-tiered cosmos. The other one that I think we clearly see is ancestor worship. I think that we see Olmec rulers connecting to their ancestors who have moved on to the other world. There's a number of stela at Laventa, especially, that make that case. But I think even the heads fit into this ancestor worship thing. Again, we can uh, post precedent it by seeing how often the Maya and the Zapotec do this. They got that from somewhere. The ancestor worship and the shamanism, I see that very clearly. The idea of a pantheon of gods, which is also in those later cultures, I don't see it as clearly. David Geralaman, decades ago now, set up a theory of an Olmec pantheon that involves 8 deities. But the pictures of the deities and the names and the functions are very strange and unclear and disjointed. And he has over half of them are gods that never appear in any other pantheon going forward. Things like the fish god. It's they're weird. They're disconnects.
Yeah.
If he's right about that being an Olmec pantheon, it died with the Olmec and didn't flower into forms in other cultures.
Yeah.
And you have Miguel Covarrubias. He did it all through art history. He was an artist in the 30s and 40s who made a kind of the same sort of chart that he learned from Greek classicists, where he would look at forms of art and iconography and track them forward into the future. And he believed that the Olmec main god was Tlaloc, the rain god, and that it's stylistically the faces of this kind of Olmec dragon or crocodile, as they call it, leads up through 3 different branches as he showed it. One was Zapotec, one was Teotihuacan, and one was Maya. But he made a pretty convincing chart that showed, at least stylistically, they were very similar and they all went back to this Olmec mountain monster or crocodilian thing. So
Interesting. So,
that's another theory that's still there.
so his idea may be that the Olmec religion evolved into the Maya religion, or have I got
Yes.
that wrong?
In
Yeah,
his in
in his idea.
Covarrubias's strategy, every religion in Mesoamerica after the Olmec were evolving from those core concepts.
Interesting, interesting. I mean, so let's go back to this concept of mother culture. Who's the chap that you mentioned earlier? Alfonso.
Alfonso Caso.
Where
Alfonso Caso.
when did he live?
He was in the height of his career, at least, was the 30s, 40s, and into the 50s. He, right when the Olmec were being discovered, and there were only a very few people working in the Olmec area, but there were pillars of academia in the Maya world. Those guys were arguing that the Olmec were after the Maya and that they weren't older than the Maya. Alfonso Caso was over there in the Valley of Oaxaca, and he became the most famous archaeologist in Mexico at that time because he found Tomb 7 in Monte Alban, which is still to date the richest tomb we've ever found in Mesoamerica, full of even gold objects, which is very rare and
Wow.
probably from South America. But I mean, at least the technique was. But anyway, Alfonso Caso had a lot of clout. And he also was digging at that San Jose Magote place. So he at San Jose Magote did stratigraphic profile digs and found Olmec stuff at the lowest levels. And in the upper levels, developing into Zapotec. The same thing was happening. A guy named George Valiant was digging in that Central Valley of Mexico, the Teotihuacan stuff. And he dug through all sorts of classic period stuff, and the lowest levels was always the Olmec pottery. So those two got together and said, look, if my site in central Mexico has Olmec at the lowest levels, and your site in Oaxaca has it at the lowest levels, that's got to be older than all the other stuff we're studying. No one had done it in the Maya area as of yet. So the Maya guys were like, no, we're the oldest. We're the original culture. So there was this battle brewing, but Alfonso Caso's force of personality, just credentials. There was this famous conference where they got together, all the people from the Maya and the Olmec and Mesoamerica got together and tried to hammer out who's older. And that was the first time that Alfonso Caso's paper called the Olmec the mother culture.
Amazing. And what year was that?
Oh
50s,
gosh, it was the 1940s. It was like mid
40s.
1940s, and it took place in
So
Tuxtla Gutierrez, Chiapas.
just
And the guy
before.
who was the Maya guy, who was the champion of the Maya guy, who was really like a bully. He was a big, tall guy. His name was J. Eric Thompson, knighted by the
Okay.
Queen. He ended his life as Sir J. Eric Thompson.
So he was
But
he was British then.
he was British by birth, but he was working for American universities, and he was
Mm.
very patriotic. And
He'd be the
he was
baddie in
like
the Indiana
hated
Jones
the
film.
Russians doing anything with the Maya area, and he swore that the Maya were older, and he called the
Yeah.
conference. But when it came to the conference, he didn't show up. He left it to
Oh
poor
wow.
Morley, who did his best, but he really just mostly beat up on the woman in the room, and it wasn't a good look.
Well, Morley was convinced that the Maya were all peaceful astronomer kings, right? He didn't
Yep.
think they were capable of warfare or doing anything, sacrificial or anything like that.
And such a product of his times too. It's interesting how, and I think about this as an archaeologist. What are the issues of my time that are tainting my view or what I hope to find? In the
Yeah.
case of Morley, we had all been through all these terrible world wars, and the
Yeah.
world needed an example of a civilization who could just get along, God damn it.
Yeah.
And, and that's what he
Absolutely.
found. And that was
Absolutely. Yeah,
everybody,
you
that
can
hit
see.
everybody's ears nice. Wow.
I mean that whole generation must have all been traumatized, to be honest. So he's probably just, yeah, he wanted peace and quiet. He didn't want to
And
face
then
the
somebody
wars.
found those bloody murals in Bonham and ruined
Yeah,
everything.
absolutely incredible. That's another place I've been lucky enough to see with my own eyes, and they are just mind blowing. Those
Oh,
murals. I'm
did you?
guessing
Well,
you've
that's
probably been there. I'm guessing.
kudos to you. That's not an easy site to get to. I have been there. Like it's near Palenque, so
Yeah.
I think
So
I've
that
been to Bonampak like 30 times.
I was at
Pretty
Palenque and then went over and did that, and the other one, Yaxchilan as well, another incredible place
that is
down
one of
the
my favorite sites. The art
Usumacinta River.
there, uh, uh, the art at Yaxchilan
Yeah,
might just be my favorite art in the whole Maya world. So beautiful, so fascinating.
and so much of it, and there's a lot of those men that you mentioned, the depictions of kings and their incredible headdresses and all the regalia, and yeah,
Not to mention the hieroglyphs, who tell us all about them, and it's a great example of propaganda out of the Maya world. The guy who we see the most at Yashilan, we call him Bird Jaguar. He was kind of illegitimate. There was a more legitimate person who should have taken the throne, and he got it away from him and went out of his way to erase this guy out of history and put himself in the position of legit king.
wow. I love the dynastic histories and how it can all be, not fully known, but things can be inferred from the evidence that we do have, and these sort of complex political alliances can be achieved. It's really interesting.
It's so easy to swat the entire corpus of hieroglyphics away as propaganda. And in that particular case I just spelled out, we know it was propaganda.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in the same breath, that's so human.
Oh yeah,
That's, I wonder why, why probably half the people that listen to this conversation of ours is going to be hearing about all these Maya things for the first time. And it's because they lack the cult of personality. I really, I want to see us, the moment that they'll take their rightful place in history is when we start talking about them like humans with human problems, like Bird Jaguar and his desire to take the throne even though he didn't deserve it. And
yeah,
the people at
yeah,
Khan Balam, we need, or at Palenque, Khan Balam's a great character. But where's our Confucius? Where's our Emotep?
yeah.
Where's our, even Charlemagne? We need these personalities connected to these cultures and civilizations, and then they come alive.
Absolutely.
And the Maya lack that at the moment. But it's
And
right there. It's low-hanging fruit.
yeah, yeah. Let alone the Olmec. I mean, the Olmec. There's nothing even approaching that.
Oh gosh, we don't have a single name. We don't have anything. We archaeologists divide the Olmec and the Epi-Olmec, and most people misunderstand that the real achievements of astronomy and writing and calendar systems, they only occur in the Epi-Olmec period after 500 BCE. So many people say, "Oh, what about Olmec writing?" Well, by as we define it, there is no Olmec writing.
So during the height of San Lorenzo and Leventa, there's no writing.
None.
So the
There's like
Maya,
one little thing on a ceramic that's probably out of context,
how
but not
interesting.
a speck of writing through right up until probably about 400 BCE. That's when Epi-Olmec writing begins. And that's a theory because we don't actually, that's from archaeological context, not from a date. And we have the same thing in the Maya area. There's actually a real, and actually the Zapotec area. There is a unknown, uh, there's a race in my mind going on to who are the ones who started writing. And the evidence is unclear. It could be the Zapotecs, it could be the Epi-Olmecs, or it could be the Maya. The vote's still out, and every year brings a new discovery that shifts the needle one way or another.
So in the period when writing begins in the Olmec world, they are still living at San Lorenzo, or have they moved on? I know that is there a third capital at Tres Zapotes? Have I got
Correct.
that wrong? Yeah.
Correct. A third capital, which is confusing actually. The Tres Zapotes is, as I say in that series I just made, it's a hot mess. The period in which the writing is going on is in a level way above the original Olmec city of Tres Zapotes. There's only three cities that have heads in them. San Lorenzo's the first one. It goes from 1800 to about 1000 BCE and dies. Then, as it falls, Laventa rises. It's also got heads. It goes from 1000 to about 500 BCE and dies. Then the rise of Tres Zapotes, which had deep underneath it a earlier Olmec city, but not much. It becomes a major city after after Laventa falls, and that's where we get the first Olmec writing. I hate the Olmec epi-Olmec thing. I think they're all Olmecs. I don't know why we have to 2.0 them at that point. It's
Yeah.
the criteria that was developed, decades ago was
Mm.
that the addition of writing and astronomy and slightly different architectural forms merited naming it a different culture. It's the lumper splitter thing. I'm a
Mm.
lumper.
I like that. It's all the same thing then, and it's they're. I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to humanize it, like we've just spoken about. So I'm imagining an individual ruler deciding, okay, we're not going to have the court here anymore. We're going to move the court to this other place. I mean, would you think of it in those terms, or am I just simplifying it and making it a like great man
Well, I
of
have thought
history?
about it in those terms, and in fact,
Yeah.
I worry that the Olmec time period of Tres Zapotes is not what we think. It's the like I said, there's only three places that have heads, and Tres Zapotes is one of them. It has like four heads. But the context in which we found those heads was obviously moved later in history. It sits on a stone floor with buildings around it and a totally different formation than either San Lorenzo and Laventa. But the stone floor was definitely made in Epi-Olmec times. So the head was moved to all four heads that we found from of Tres Zapote, sorry, were definitely moved from a original context to where we found them. And we've made this assumption that the heads had to be somewhere in Tres Zapotes, and they were moved from one location to another within Tres Zapotes. But that is an assumption. We know they can move them 70 kilometers away. Who's to say that Laventa didn't have eight heads and they rolled four of them over to Tres Zapotes to start a new kingdom based on
Mm.
whatever factors? Maybe things were getting hot with the Maya. Maybe they needed, to focus on their trade relationships with the West instead, which is what we see. Tres Zapotes becomes much more insular. They're communicating with the Peten much less. They're still talking to the Maya in the south of them, but most of their obsidian clearly coming from the West Mexico, and they start making their own ceramics. The the older Olmec had as many ceramics from outside their region as they did homemade. But Tres Zapotes is mostly their own ceramics, which indicates a kind of insular attitude in comparison to their ancestors.
How interesting. I'm just thinking of the ancestor worship that you mentioned earlier. I mean, these heads, they could have moved them to, gain the power of whoever that ancestor had been. Maybe it was their version of, I don't know, Alexander the Great in the past, and they thought we'll take him, use his power to move forwards with our new
Or
kingdom.
again, a precedent in the Maya world. I mean, they used
Mm,
statues and burials to connect to those ancestors'
mm.
spirits. So yes, I mean, gosh, I hate to say it even out loud because it flies in what textbooks say so much, but why is it impossible that the heads and Tres Zapotes weren't moved, as you just pointed out, from a previous capital, Laventa, or maybe even a capital we haven't found yet? I mean, shit. Inamata just found 200 more platforms for us to look over.
Yeah, yeah.
What if it's one of them?
We love to move things. and we love to sort of mess around with things that have already been built. So yeah, why wouldn't people be moving around things that their predecessors had done? We
Gosh,
do it all the
the
time.
Aztecs did a bunch of excavations at Teotihuacan and
Yeah,
made themselves a little Teotihuacan museum in their
yeah,
capital.
yeah, and all sorts of other places as well. They were just sort of gathering things from other areas, weren't they, and amassing it in their city of Tenochtitlan.
Oh my gosh, I think they were actually, seeking to rewrite Mesoamerican history, a la, the Third Reich.
Mm,
They were
absolutely, yeah. I mean
they were
that,
going
and
to
that's
gather it all up and recast
yeah,
history.
yeah, 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 and that's what a lot of the Spanish chroniclers just say, don't they? Like Diego Duran and people like that. They write about the Aztecs. There was one religious leader, Tlaquilel, or
Good
what was his
job,
name? Yeah,
Tlacaelel. Yeah, he was
Tlaquilel.
the
Yeah.
he was the consultant for 4 or 5 Aztec rulers. Never ruler himself, but he
Mm,
rewrote history. He said, like, everybody, turn your books in.
yeah, for sure,
We're
for
going to
sure.
distribute some new textbooks here.
That's right.
This is what really
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, I always think he is absolutely the power behind the throne. You know, he's the guy who's pulling the strings behind the scenes, as far as I'm concerned. I seem to
There's
remember
that kind
there's
of cult of personality that we
yeah,
need people to know about. Tlacaelel, hey folks,
yeah,
Google Tlacaelel. It'll blow your
yeah,
socks
yeah, yeah,
off
yeah.
if you can spell it.
He's the Tywin Lannister of the Aztecs, just to go more Game of Thrones. Um,
There you go.
so I've gone completely off topic there. We were talking about Olmec heads. I had a question. What was my question? My question was back to
They
the
were
beginning.
moved. We were talking actually. I pushed you into Olmec heads again when you were talking about writing.
Yes, we were talking about writing. I had another question. I wanted to go back to the very beginning because basically, okay, before we talk about the writing, I've been trying to ascertain which one came first, Maya or Olmec, and which one was more influential. Olmecs are winning so far, for sure. Oldest pyramid that's Olmec, right?
No.
No. Ah, is that one for the Maya?
Actually, again, we're not sure. I will not go. I am Team Maya. I'm unapologetically Team Maya, but I will say that the vote is still out. But
Yeah.
you are correct in the traditional published ideas that the Great Pyramid at La Venta, built somewhere around 900 to 600 BC, is the first Olmec pyramid. It's 25
Yeah.
meters tall and it's earthen. But there's a site in the Soconusco. It's either, I'm blanking on the name. It's either La Blanca or Paseo de la Amada. It's La Blanca. And it has a 30-meter pyramid, also made of earth, that's the same time period. We put it around 900 BCE. But we're more solid with the dates on that one than we are in the one in La Venta. Uh, La Venta was dug too long ago. We really need to go back in there and get all the way. The problem is it's slumping and it's in bad condition, and nobody's actually dug all the way into its earliest phase. So we
Mm,
don't know if it has an earlier phase.
yeah.
La
So it need
Blanca, which is clearly, well, to me, it's Maya, because again, I'm a lumper. I think that the guys down there, uh, the guys from BYU, want to call the culture at that time the Mokaya instead of the Maya. But I
okay.
really, that's just like in the local language, that just means corn people. It's a cool sounding name, but I think again they're splitting when they should have been lumping. I think it's a Maya pyramid that is also earthen, also the same size at the same dates as La Venta's first pyramid. San Lorenzo, no pyramid.
When you said your team Maya, I mean, is that just in terms of you prefer the Maya or you think they are the oldest? You think they are the mother culture?
Uh, Preference. Though
Preference. Yeah.
I do think that the overall evidence stacks up in at least co-evolutionary. I'll
Coevolution.
be
Yeah.
diplomatic
Yeah.
and say, not that anybody's, the Olmec need more support and more research. Of
Yeah.
course, those are
Yeah.
both a moot point because, the in the northern part of Louisiana is the site of Poverty Point. where there's a pyramid bigger than either one of those two pyramids we just talked about at 1700 BCE, 1500 conservatively, but still 1,000 years older than either one of those. And don't even get started on South
Peru.
America. Then, then,
Yeah.
then we've got to attribute pyramid.
Oh
We got
yeah.
to say that the Mesoamericans were embarrassingly late to the pyramid game.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But we won't do that yet because we're just talking about Mesoamerica. So that's our world at the moment.
Well
That's the
enough, well
limits of
enough.
our world. So oldest pyramid may well be Maya.
Yeah, I actually think that our current state of evidence, which we always have to preface in archaeology,
Yeah.
we have a fraction of history to make our decisions upon. LeBlanc's pyramid is older.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. That's really interesting. So I've learned something today. Aguada Phoenix is not Maya, but well, it's a bit Maya, but it's
It's a
probably more
border thing.
Olmec.
It's a border thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Laredo down in Texas.
Yeah. So it's
It's
yeah.
definitely United States, but boy, that place is pretty Mexican.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. It's often these sort of peripheral border areas where interesting things happen, where cultures mingling, things happening, you know.
And for we
Yeah,
archaeologists, I mean, it gives us insights that other places just don't,
yeah,
especially about
yeah,
interactions.
absolutely. So writing systems, which I mean, you're saying you think there's a lost predecessor to all of these writing systems. Is that would you say that or not?
No,
No.
in my thought thinking is I don't know who started it,
Yeah,
but three different culture areas were playing with it. And I think that
interesting.
there was feedback from each other. I think that they all agreed that it should be a set of symbols based on syllabic sounds, but each one of them spoke a different language. So it's really hard for us to figure out what sounds mean what. They don't mean the same thing in the three. And we see, we have two separate lines of trying to say who did it first. We have the actual invention of the calendar and the long count, where we can peg it to a certain date. The oldest one we have in that regard is 36 BCE at Chiapa de Corzo that we just talked about. But right on its heels is Stela C in Tres Zapotes, an Olmec site at 32 BC. So 4 years in between. That is not enough to say who did it first. I mean, but then you go into the archaeology and you find texts that don't have dates in them, but they do have archaeological context. So, you go back into the very first calendar glyph that we know of is from San Jose Mogote, that Olmec Zapotec place.
Hmm.
It's a single calendar glyph, but it is by archaeological context at 600 AD.
Okay.
Then pretty recently, we found Proto-Maya hieroglyphs in the site of San Bartolo in the northern part of Guatemala's jungle. And those don't have any date in them, but they were painted onto a rock with black charcoal. And so we've dated that charcoal, and that's at 300 BCE. So
Whoa.
we've got two examples, Zapotec and Maya, that are way older than anything we have in the Olmec world in terms of archaeological context. So you see my trouble here.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
especially when the Maya world is so vast. I said it again. I've said it. I'll say it again right here. We have excavated less than 1% of the Maya world. How in the world would any responsible scientist make any conclusions based on a sample of less than 1%?
Hmm.
So the evidence has yet to been truly revealed. The race currently is going to either the Zapotecs or the Maya, not the Olmec. The Olmec need to clap back with something in archaeological context
So, the Olmec were winning at the start of this conversation, but it's falling away. The Maya, even the Zapotecs are getting one over them.
The Zapotecs were great. They early Zapotec writing is definitely syllabic, and then they just quit.
Wow.
And they
Okay.
go into this much more simplistic form of writing that focuses on people, places, and dates, and does not write full sentences anymore, and doesn't attempt to use syllabic symbols, where the Maya bring it to a new level, and the Olmec just they fall apart. They become what we call classic Veracruz culture, who, just like the Zapotec, start using this very simple form of writing, where centuries before their writing was actually more complex.
Yeah.
The Zapotecs and the Olmecs give up, and the Maya take the baton and run to a new level.
Do you think the Olmec kind of the end of the Olmecs is partly to do with the rise of the Maya? Is it kind of a cultural domination from that area?
Not exactly. It's a
Hmm.
weird pattern that when the Olmec go away, their cities become just tombs for centuries. So they fade out in that BC period, and then nobody inhabits that area again for centuries. Eventually, the site of San Lorenzo and Tres Zapotes get re-inhabited, especially San Lorenzo. It sits virtually dead from 800 BC to about 800 AD when a new group that are more Central Mexican come in.
And who's that?
Gosh, I think I don't know that we even assign a culture time period to them by ceramics and by building types. They're kind of this. In that time period, we get a lot of movement in the central Mexico.
Mm,
Teotihuacan falls about 650, maybe
mm,
600, and it
yeah.
causes this huge power vacuum. And there's this crazy amount of change that happens. And so I don't know that I've ever heard a specific culture assigned to the people who re-inhabit the platform of San Lorenzo, but we call them the site San Lorenzo de Tenochtitlan, which is the capital city of the Aztecs. And at contact, there are Aztec dominated people living there.
Yeah. Yeah. Those Aztecs, they got around, didn't they? They took everything.
Oh, they were really gonna cause
Yeah,
a big stir and make an empire if it wasn't for those meddling Spaniards and their
absolutely.
diseases.
Absolutely. Right, we're jumping ahead here. We're gonna try and bring us back to the Olmec just to finish off
Okay,
this conversation. I've really enjoyed this. We're going to have more conversations. We're going to have to talk about the Aztecs at a future date.
sure, I'll show up whenever you'd like.
Amazing. So, Olmecs. Okay, I'm going back to Alfonso. Going back to Alfonso. I mean, is he right?
I don't think so.
No,
I
he's
do
not
not
right.
think so. I think that he was right with the information that he had at his disposal at the time,
Yeah.
but that luckily archaeology continued for another 70 years, and here we are at a place where I think that the term mother culture overemphasizes the influence of the Olmec. I think if we just narrow it down to religion, I'm comfortable with it. Let's say let's say the Olmec are the mother culture in terms of Mesoamerican religion. But in terms
Mm.
of technology, in terms of subsistence strategies, in terms of even architectural forms, they were in a co-evolution influenced by their neighbors as much as they were influencing them.
The reality is always much more complex, isn't it? The more we find out, the more everything's just way more complex.
And
Um,
in archaeology, we want to write a paper that has very concise things and they're very hard lines, but humans aren't like that.
no,
We love an encapsulating term like mother culture, but that's just not how humans roll. We're
no,
just
no.
more complicated, and it makes an already difficult situation seem almost hopeless sometimes in archaeology with our blunt tools and
Yeah.
our crumbs of a tapestry that was once rich.
It's a nice starting point, isn't it? An idea like that. It's sort of a stab in the dark by somebody with really, the lights are off. He doesn't have much to go on. But
It
over
starts the
time,
conversation,
it
doesn't it?
starts the conversation exactly, yeah. And over time, we can then hone that idea and change it. Because, yeah, contrary to what a lot of people, I think about archaeology, is that it does change based on the consensus of what archaeologists think. It sometimes takes a long time for that to happen. There's that famous saying of science changes one funeral at a time. Um,
I like
but
that. I hadn't heard that.
yeah,
That's true.
but it's true, yeah. But consensus does change over time, drastically sometimes. Um, yeah, yeah, interesting
Sometimes led by the times we live in, and sometimes led by a paradigm shifting discovery like Göbekli Tepe.
for sure, for sure. Or Corral is the other one in Peru.
Oh God,
Um,
what a magnificent site. It's so amazing. I've been there like 4 times and I have never seen another tourist. It's so sad.
I
It's such a crucible of human civilization,
yeah,
but it's
I,
like you just visited the moon. There's no one there.
absolutely. I'm very lucky that I have visited Corral as well. I went in
Nice.
2023. My wife and I went, and yes, we were the only people, I think, in the entire valley from the Western world.
Yeah, it
Everybody
feels like you're on
else,
the surface of the moon, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. Nicest people, but you are really in the middle of nowhere there. Did you stay in the hotel there, Ed?
No, too rich for my blood. I stayed in the Hotel Chavine in the funny little town of Barranco nearby.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh yeah, Barranco. Yeah, we went past there. We stayed in the hotel for whatever reason. We were the only guests. It seemed like we were the only guests that had been there for 6 months. Great place though.
I bet you that's true.
Yeah, great place, and they were all so nice. But I'm changing the subject completely here. We'll talk about that another time. Right. Last thing I wanted to ask you about. Okay, so we've had pyramids, we've had writing. Olmecs aren't getting anything so far. Oldest ball court. What do we
Maya.
think? Maya again. Okay.
Yep,
Sorry,
it's a big.
Olmecs.
I think that one is Paseo de la Amada. I'm confusing my names here, but they're all in the Soconusco region, that
Mm.
southern Chiapas, Guatemala area. But our oldest ball court is there. It's about 1600 BCE, and the
It's so
second
old.
place winner is Etlantongo in Oaxaca. It's their first Maya, then Zapotec, and way later the Olmec. But our oldest ball is Olmec. It's found in the
Aha.
swamps in El
Ah,
Manatee.
great.
So,
The Olmecs get a win.
they do have the oldest ball, but that's because we got lucky and found an anaerobic swamp, the same thing that creates those bog bodies. So, there we found actually multiple balls in El Manatee Swamp, and for some strange reason, they outshine all of the bog body babies we found in there too. You
Wow.
don't even hear about those guys, and I am like I could pull my hair out that nobody's done DNA studies on those freaking bog babies.
So what's
That
going on
when they
there?
first found them, they thought they were monkeys, and then somebody was like, "No, these are human babies."
Sacrifices?
Well, that's what most of the publications say, and I feel like it's one of those microaggressions against Mesoamerica, making look, you got to be a real particular psycho to kill babies. And I don't
This is
think
true.
that's the case. I think that infant mortality was very prevalent in the times, and I think they were being buried as offerings and in sorrow, not as some kind of macabre sacrifice of the innocent.
Yeah, you make a good point there. Yeah, killing babies is not that common. Maybe
That's
the
a
Carthaginians
particular
did
kind
it.
of psycho. You gotta, that's only the Spartans do that,
I
and
was just
only
thinking.
chicks.
I was thinking Carth. Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking Carthaginians, but maybe that's the Roman propaganda that's got to me.
This whole baby killing thing is again and again hypothesized in Mesoamerica, and I think it's unfair. There are other
Yeah.
explanations that at least should be forwarded along with the idea that they were sacrificed. But,
Hmm.
you got to sell the newspapers, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, right. We've had ball courts, we've had balls. It's just jumped into my head. Not to completely take away from everything that you've just said, but earliest evidence of sacrifices. I mean, the Maya weren't huge on sacrificing, but they did do it a bit. The Aztecs are obviously the guys who did it to the next level. Did the Olmecs sacrifice people? Is this a later development?
There is no
No
evidence
evidence.
anywhere in Olmec art or in the artifact record that they were violent in that way. In fact, you can't even find any war imagery in the Olmec area. I have searched and searched. The very first one I find is at Tres Zapotes, and it gets into the CE period. I think it's like 100, 200 CE. There's a monument there that actually shows a guy with a spear and a king and somebody kneeling between them, like that it's a captive. Not quite sacrifice yet. Our current evidence, I think, says that sacrifices began as a practice in the central Mexican area, like in
Hmm.
the early days of Teotihuacan or just before. That's where we see our first evidence of sacrifice. In Teotihuacan, a ton of it, like lots of sacrificed bodies. But the Olmec, there's not one single, not even is there not sacrifice, but there is not war. I looked through the entire corpus of things that were recorded in San Lorenzo, and I found five arrowheads. Five.
Wow.
We could
Wow,
be looking in
that's
the wrong place, but there's no evidence.
That's really interesting. What are the helmets for on the heads? Are they for playing the ball game?
I don't think so. I think that that is a Western idea of thinking about football players and their helmets. There are
Yeah.
no helmets in the going forward in the depictions of Maya and Zapotec and Aztec ball games. Nobody's wearing a helmet. So it's a little weird that they would be in ball game context there and nowhere else. Now there are helmets, but they are worn in war.
Hmm.
There are helmets that are evidenced in both central Mexico and in the Maya. There's a really cool one in the museum in Guatemala where he's a little action figure, a portly little guy in armor, and his helmet comes off.
Oh, nice. Love that. Love that. But what do you think the stone heads had on their heads then? Because some of them have got kind of these hat
I think they're
looking
a
type things.
decorative kind of crown.
Hmm.
The going forward again, the Maya and the Zapotec, where you find big, elaborate headpieces that are all unique to that king. There's not like you know how the royalty of England have had basically the same crown for a long time now.
Yeah.
Each Mesoamerican king had his own crown that involved elements that named his lineage and his family, maybe even his own name. And so an interesting thing about the Olmec heads is that each helmet is different.
Yeah.
And it's a good
Ah,
chance that those helmet elements are naming ancestral ties or their name. They're all different.
incredible.
So
Uh,
I think they're crowns.
yeah.
And I wish they could pull them. I wish I could pull them off their head because I want to see if they're bald. So many Olmec are bald. But the weird thing, all the Olmec bald people, they all have the obvious cranial deformation. Their heads are pointing up and they're bald. But the Olmec heads don't have cranial deformation. None of them. They are normal skull sizes. They're not the wrong shape.
What's going on with that? That's strange.
I don't know. It's a real disconnect. I wish I could pull
That's
that helmet off and see if they were bald or not.
yeah, that's
Because
interesting.
every Olmec man I've ever seen depicted is bald.
They are always bald, aren't they? How
I think it's a
interesting. How
sign.
interesting.
It's a form of. There's a term for it. Tonsure, like monks who shave their
Hmm.
heads in different patterns. The
Yeah.
friars and the monks of Asia. That's tonsure, and it's an act of piety to shave your head in such a way. I think that's what the Olmec are doing. I think that was tonsure.
Purification, maybe, or something as well. I don't know.
I think an outward
Maybe not.
sign to the public who
Mm,
sees you that you are devout in that religious way.
yeah, yeah. So possibly all these people who are depicted are sort of priests in a way.
And all of them have that cranial deformation. They're obviously that they've been squeezing their head and making it come to a point at the top, but the Olmec heads don't have that. So are they different classes?
Could it be that the Olmecs practiced a different sort of burial for those sorts of people? Maybe they were all burned or something. I don't know. Wild theory.
That is a frustrating thing. I think published we have like two Olmec skeletons. Though when you go around the Olmec world and go into the little musty museums, I see a bunch of skeletons, including those bog babies. It's a weird disconnect. The literature and the internet will tell you there's no skeletons, but
Yeah,
there are.
they're awesome. It sounds like the Olmecs need more work. So
Oh, so much so.
if you're an archaeologist out there, go do the Olmecs. Is there any funding? Would they get funding for this, Ed?
It's difficult,
Hmm,
archaeology
always
perennially,
hard.
in economic terms, we make neither guns nor butter, so nobody wants to give us any money.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the Olmec area, the Isthmus of Tehuantepec is rough. It is a god-forsaken swamp full of
Hmm.
5 meter long crocodiles. One
Hmm.
of the reasons we don't do more archaeology in there, because it's a rare person that has the education to do it and the guts to do it.
Yeah.
It's we need more Franz Bloms in this generation. Some
We
people
do.
that are just fueled
Yeah.
by whiskey and
Yeah.
bravado. And
Yeah.
those are the guys who will go in.
And they don't mind having a stomach upset in the forest.
It's rough work. It's one of the reasons we know so much about Oaxaca is because that is a lovely place to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Mexico City as well is lovely. Yeah.
The swamps
Um,
are hard.
yeah. I've not been to the Olmec area. I really want to one day, so I can't speak for that. But I have been into the Yucatan, the rainforest, and that's quite hard going, for me anyway, as a European. Ed, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved this conversation. And I'm sure everybody listening will love it too. Carry on doing what you're doing. It's absolutely awesome. I spotted that you have a YouTube channel now. So
I do.
anybody who is watching this, go and subscribe to Ed's channel because it's great. He's the expert. He's the guy.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. It's been great. Please invite me on again sometime.
Yeah, we're going to have to do this again. We've only managed to do the pre-classic Maya and the Olmecs, so we're going to have to do more in the future.
Awesome.
So
I'm in.
let's do it. All right. Thanks everybody. See you on the next one.